Welcome back to the Deep Discog Dive. We all have our dream music festival lineups, right? Where we envision playing musical God and imagine all of our favorite bands in one place together. Who knows, you might even get to see a mic stand. My dream lineup is pretty simple. It's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with Eddie Izzard and Henry Tizzard with a pair of Dizzard scissors performing in a blizzard. Today, we're talking about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Let's dive in. Get ready to place a decapod crustacean on the heating device because our story starts in Australia at RMIT in 2010 with three music industry students, Stu McKenzie, Joey Walker, and Eric Moore. They started hanging out and jamming together, eventually expanding their jam band to include mutual friends. By the time they were playing shows, their roster featured the three RMIT students, along with Ambrose Kenny Smith, Lucas Skinner, Michael Cavanaugh, and Cook Craig. Their band name came from a mashup of Jim Morrison's nickname Lizard King and Stu's idea Gizzard. The wizard part, I don't know, maybe they were all wizards for their D&D night. King Gizzard shopped their demo recordings around to different labels with no luck, but instead of giving up, Eric Moore started his own record label, Flightless. Their operation started out very small. In fact, their first record shipments were sent out in pizza boxes. The Gizzcography proper starts with two pairs of singles, followed by two EPs, Anglesey and Willoughby's Beach. With the exception of Willoughby's Beach, all of these songs wouldn't be commercially available until a 2020 compilation. One song from Willoughby, though, Deadbeat, became a prominent hit in Australia thanks to airplay on regional radio station Triple J. King Gizzard's first studio album, 12 Bar Bruise, was released in September 2012. If what you want is some raucous guitar and surf rock, this debut fits the bill damn well. The opener, Elbow, is a great intro, harsh feedback on the guitars, call and response vocals, commanding drums, though I also love the last 10 seconds where they change keys, and I kinda wish that part was longer. Cutthroat Boogie kicks off a trend for King Gizzard Records. If a song has the word boogie in it, it's gonna be a banger. This particular boogie has a great vocal performance from Ambrose, and it's actually based on him getting his throat cut as a teen. Other highlights include 9, the title track featuring vocals recorded on iPhones, and Sea of Trees. One more thing, this album art. Looks pretty sick, right? I made it myself. Except I didn't make it myself. It was done by Melbourne artist Jason Galea, who will go on to handle all of the band's art and many of their music videos from here on out. He's kind of like the Stanley Donwood to King Gizzard's Radiohead. 12 Bar Bruise is a solid album on its own, though you'll see as we continue, it's a bit of an anomaly in King Gizzard's body of work. This garage rock sound is not one they're gonna stick with for much longer. But hey, it's fun, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. If I could choose how to be born into the world, this is how I would do it. Damn it! I forgot to mention one song off 12 Bar Bruise, Sam Cherry's Last Shot. The concept came from Ambrose's love of the Wild West, and it features narration from Ambrose's dad, Broderick Smith. Broderick had a fairly prolific career as a blues musician and an actor in Western films. And so, in their first and certainly not last instance of defying rock band expectations, King Gizzard took the aesthetic from Sam Cherry's Last Shot and grew it into a, quote, cult Western audio book, inspired by old Westerns and more modern media like Red Dead Redemption. Eyes Like the Sky, released in February 2013. Wow, a second album less than 6 months after the first. I bet that'll be the last time we see such a quick turnaround time from them. King Gizzard handled instrumental duties, but all vocals were recorded by Broderick on his MacBook microphone. And the two parties work well together. Broderick's lo-fi growl is complemented well by the band's spaghetti western homages, like on the title track, the drum run, and the Godman's Goat Lust. This is also where we start to see KG weave stories involving land and its mistreatment. Of course, it's pretty clear this time with a narrative centered around indigenous people, but it'll continue to pop up as they tackle environmental issues in their music later on. The concept of Eyes Like the Sky is great, and the execution is good. If it sounds like I'm indifferent, it's because, once again, this record is not representative of the sound KG will become known for. Plus, it's best enjoyed as a whole, which means the individual pieces don't hold up well on their own. But still, it's a fascinating experiment for sure. 2 albums in, and the dudes simply refused to slow down. Their next record would see significant changes that would reverberate throughout space-time. Like a second hi-hat. The biggest change between these records was Eric Moore becoming the band's second drummer. First they defied music industry conventions, and then they defied God. In September 2013, we got Float Along, Fill Your Lungs. Let's start with the opener, Head On Pill. Head on Pill is to King Gizzard what Echoes was to Pink Floyd. It's the first song that displays what they're capable of when their talent matches their ambition. The opening and closing of the song are tranquil, mainly carried by a melody on sitar, but the bulk of the song, the real beef, meat, and cheese, is the extended middle section, as the band pick up the tempo and rapidly hand off solos between each other. I love the hook where the guitar and falsetto sync up. As you may guess from the opener, this is King Gizzard's first dive into psychedelic rock. This is the sound that they will pull from for the foreseeable future. It certainly helps too that the band were starting to congeal as a confident live act, and that confidence translates on the record. Tracks like I'm Not a Man Unless I Have a Woman and 30 Past 7 conjure up a psych pop aesthetic. Close your ears and you'd probably mistake them for Tame Impala circa lonerism. And the title track closes the album out, managing to sound both epic and laid back. The distorted guitar carrying the melodies, the sitar adding rhythmic accents, and the underlaying synths fleshing out the arrangements. Aside from the quality of the music, this record introduces a key staple of King Gizzard's songwriting: odd time signatures. Seriously, if you listen to a King Gizzard album from here on out and don't hear at least one song in 5 or 7, you've crossed into the beyond realm. King Gizzard still had a ways to dig before hitting gold, but Float Along Fill Your Lungs was that first moment when you realized they were digging in the right direction. By this point, it's clear that King Gizzard have a pretty ridiculous work ethic. It would stand to reason that a band that can release 3 albums in the span of a year writes and records plenty that doesn't see the light of day. Until, that is, it sees the light of day. In March 2014, Oddments was released. As you might guess from that title, Oddments is a collection of odds and ends that didn't make it onto past albums. According to Stu, the name comes from soda bottles that were sold outside of a larger pack at a smaller price. If anything, this might be the closest King Gizzard has come to making an outright pop album, connecting stray threads from the past 3 albums with the uniting power of pop. Aluda Majaka centers around a sample from the Bollywood movie of the same name. Stressin' and Homeless Man and Adidas are both down-tempo tracks, the former being a synth jam, the latter being carried by acoustic guitar. Vegemite and Hot Wax walk on the sillier side, showing KG's sense of humor. I once had Vegemite, and it was the worst thing I've ever tasted. 0 gold stars for Vegemite. There's also Work This Time, which is, according to Spotify, their most popular song. I don't mean to be rude, but why? It's not a bad song, it's just there's no real reason for it to have so many listens. It wasn't used in any movie or TV show, it wasn't a radio hit, no one made memes with it. My only guess is that it was featured on some popular playlist. That said, it's a nice sonic change of pace, and Joey Walker shines in a rare vocal performance. What Oddments gains with its more scattered approach, though, it loses with, well, its more scattered approach. It's the least sonically consistent album King Gizzard's made so far, and if you value cohesion in your albums, this won't be your favorite King Gizzard project. But still, it won't leave a bad taste in your mouth, unlike Vegemite's stupid food. By the time Oddments had released, which, to put that in context, was 18 months since their first album, King Gizzard had built a solid cult reputation, and they commemorated that reputation with their first worldwide tour, kicking off in spring 2014. It was during their trek across the US and Europe that they recorded their next 2 albums. In October 2014, King Gizzard released I'm in Your Mind, Fuzz. Well, get the hell out of it! Like Float Along, Mind Fuzz's opener is the main event, but this time, instead of a single long song, it's 4 songs combining together into a suite. This is where King Gizzard started blending songs together, and the result is excellent. Within its first seconds, I'm in Your Mind sets the blistering pace of the suite, and the following 3 tracks combine fuzzed out vocals, furious drums, blaring harmonica, and electrifying guitars. Also like Float Along, the opener, or in this case opening suite, is the main event here, but that's not to dismiss the rest of the album. Empty puts heavy emphasis on pan flutes, hoping to create this hypnotizing feel. Am I in Heaven not only has a lovely acoustic passage, but it also sees KG revisiting the lyrical topic of the environment and its mistreatment. And the last 3 tracks even bring in some of that lo-fi pop flavor that was taking place on Oddments. What we have here in total is what I consider to be King Gizzard's first great album. Peace out. In April 2015, King Gizzard announced their first ever Gizzfest, a series of dates stretching across Australia. The festival included other local acts like the Murlocs and the Baby Rainbow. They would continue the Fest Giz-Ities every year until 2019. The month after the first Gizzfest, King Gizzard released the second record they recorded while touring the world, Quarters, in May 2015. Now before you say it, no, this one is not about the band's prized Quarters collection. Instead, the title refers to the track list. There's 4 songs that are all the same length, 10 minutes and 10 seconds. The 4 songs feel like the natural extension from those last 3 jams from Mind Fuzz. They definitely lean into the psych part of psych rock, focusing more on hazy soundscapes than rowdy rockers. If there's one track that defines this album's experimental vibe, it's The River, a jazz jam session, like if King Gizzard had made Dave Brubeck's Take 5. It's become a staple of KG's live shows, and for good reason. Like Mind Fuzz, it shows the band developing their interplay and their ability to listen and respond to each other. The other tracks are fine, though I don't revisit them as much as The River. I love the bass line on Infinite Rise, and God Is in the Rhythm is the perfect slow dance song for when you're blazed. Quarters may first come off as a gimmick or experiment, but it does have its moments. It shows the band can keep your attention for long run times, and it serves as a necessary fulcrum point for the band's trajectory from here. 6 albums in, and King Gizzard had effectively locked down the Gizzard sound. Their worldwide tour wrapped up in September 2015, with their next album releasing 2 months later, Paper Mache Dream Balloon, in November 2015. Let's see what premier slice of blaring psych rock the guys cooked up this time. Stuck in a daydream. Come on, guys. You're making me look like an asshole. In their latest act of blasphemy, King Gizzard made their first fully acoustic album. Out are electric guitars and distortion pedals, and in are the acoustic guitars and pan flutes. Apparently this album was supposed to be another high-minded concept record in line with Mind Fuzz and Quarters, but Stu decided to do the exact opposite. It's the most radical shift in sound the band has taken since its inception, and it's still pretty good. What a good opening track sense is. I defy you to name a song with a clarinet hook as good as this. Phone earns the highest compliment I can give to a song. It reminds me of that one song the Shins did for the SpongeBob movie soundtrack. Other songs like the title track, Most of What I Like, and The Bitter Boogie nail that easygoing feel. The most intense song on here is probably Trapdoor. With the quick tempo, unnerving falsetto, and pan flute, it definitely brings a lot to the table. Also, I like how the closing is a mashup of all the previous songs with a flute playing the melodies. Comes across like an end credit song for whatever stop motion kid show the album artwork is depicting. And I gotta pay respect to Eric Moore on this one. He just killed it when it came to him doing, according to the liner notes, nothing. One day I want to do nothing as well as Eric did. Paper Mache Dream Balloon may not knock you in the face like past albums, but that's also not its point whatsoever. It's the perfect KG album for lazy weekends, casual drives, kicking back and reading a good book. And 7 albums in, it's nice to see that they're not pigeonholing themselves. By the time King Gizzard released Paper Mache, they had toured the road so much that they were the road. Turns out after playing shows consistently for over 3 years, you start to lock in your skills, and maybe, just maybe, you start wanting to merge aspects of your live show with your recordings. The impetus for the next album was an infinite concert, the idea that a KG show would start and never stop. This manifested into an album that could be played on loop. In April 2016, we got Nonagon Infinity. If there's any overarching compliment I can give Nonagon Infinity, it's that it does not waste time. Robot Stop kicks ass. I feel like I should be more astute in my praise, but I don't know how else I can put it. From the very second it starts, it straps you into your seat and refuses to let up. Shout out to that oblique vocal harmony on the chorus, so good. And that feeling continues for the rest of the album. Big Fig Wasp carries on the melodic motifs of Robot Stop while adding an earworm chorus in 9/8. I love the way the vocals and guitar are syncopated on Gamma Knife and when they're interrupted by that harmonica. An invisible face shifts into a bossa nova pastiche for the middle stretch. That said, while I do like the infinite loop concept, I wish the ending of Road Train was a bit more definitive. Then again, I don't know how they would have been able to pull that off without betraying the album's concept. Maybe with the end of Road Train where it starts to lead into Robot Stop, if that was cut from Road Train and added to the top of Robot Stop. Anyway, as is, I have to listen to it as a loop in order to get the best experience, and I wish it was more accommodating for when you want to listen once. I barely have 40 minutes in my day to listen to an album. What makes you think I have all of Infinity? That one quibble aside, Nonagon Infinity is the King Gizzard album. It's the one that blends all of the band's best qualities into one satisfying whole. And if you're looking for an entry point into the band, this is the one. Nonagon Infinity was King Gizzard's big break into the mainstream. Glowing reviews, solid sales, awards from the Arias, and a solidified reputation as being one of the most bonkers bands currently working. So what would they do next? In November 2016, King Gizzard announced that they would release 5 albums in 2017, a feat not attempted since the days when artists would pump out several albums in the span of a year. Now, I can only speak for myself here, but I feel like the reason people don't do that kind of release schedule anymore is because it's really hard and tiring to do. And with their newfound spotlight after Nonagon, some saw this announcement as a supreme gimmick from King Gimmick and the Limmick Wimmick. Nevertheless, album number 1 of 2017 was February's Flying Microtonal Banana. Let's take a second to understand that one word. So a banana is a kind of fruit, and microtonality is, in a basic sense, the practice of using pitches that lie in between the usual 12 tones per octave of our Western music notation system. Once you've unlocked that Pandora's box, there's a whole new realm of songwriting possibilities to be found. But don't you worry your pretty little face, because Flying Microtonal Banana is not inaccessible, and the band do well interweaving microtonal motifs into their usual songwriting and production. Kicking things off is the fan favorite Rattlesnake. You might find the official recording to be fairly repetitive, but from all accounts, this track slays. It decimates in a live setting. Nuclear Fusion saunters and lumbers in a distinct way from the rest of King Gizzard's songs, probably one of the first individual songs I'd recommend to a KG newcomer. I also gotta say, I love Billabong Valley. The upbeat first half, the second half using the same melody and chords but with a contrasting, slower tempo, the main melody played on zurna, a principal instrument in Turkish music, and the way those pitch-shifted vocals descend on Mad Dog Morgan. And the closing title track puts the biggest spotlight on the zurna. A nice way to pay respect to the instrument and the culture it's from. Overall, Flying Microtonal Banana is a fine follow-up to Nonagon, and a sign that King Gizzard still had plenty of drive to experiment and stay fresh. Who knows, they might actually pull off 5 albums in a year. Album number 2 of 2017, Murder of the Universe, was released in June. On the band's website, Stu called this his favorite KG record, citing how stupid and ugly it is. I won't speak on the first point, but I will agree on the second. This thing is pretty ugly. It's ugly, it's loud, and it's pessimistic. But it's still a good time. We've got 3 song cycles compromising this album: The Tale of the Altered Beast, The Lord of Lightning versus the Balrog, and Hand to Me, and The Murder of the Universe. Aside from its narrative ambition, it's also kind of a spiritual successor to Eyes Like the Sky, as each song cycle has spoken narration set against KG's playing. The first cycle tells the story of a man wishing to be transformed into a beast, with vocals being traded between Stu's singing and spoken narration from guest Leah Sr. The second third depicts a battle between the Lord of Lightning and the Balrog. By the end, the world has been decimated, the Balrog is dead, and the Lord has left. Which leads into the final cycle, where a black wave of death has consumed the earth, and the only remaining being is Hand to Me, the confused cyborg.
Instead of Leah Sr., the narrator is natural reader's UK Charles voice.
As an attempt to connect more with humanity, the cyborg builds a contraption called the Soy Protein Munt Machine, which does the only 2 things Hand to Me believes humans do: vomit and die. He's not wrong. Eventually, the 2 merge, spewing out a gray vomit that engulfs everything, leading to the murder of the universe. This album is a lot to take in on a conceptual level. To be crystal clear, you should not start with this one by any means. But once you have a few KG records under your belt and you're ready for something more story-driven and weighty, you may find a lot to love here. Plus, the song cycles are very well paced. I never felt like a track dragged on for too long. And while we're talking about stories in King Gizzard's music, I suppose we should take some time for... So all of these albums are connected? Around this time, a theory began spreading throughout the King Gizzard fan base. A theory that the past 3 albums, and even the ones from before and the ones that will come after, were part of a shared thematic universe called the Gizzverse. This was based off explicit instances where characters or locations from one album were referenced on another album. And if you listen to King Gizzard enough, you'll find callbacks, whether it's a mention of a character, or a borrowed musical motif, or a reappearing location on the cover art. I should make clear though, all of it is speculation. All of it. The band has confirmed that they do write music with an overall plot in mind, and the references are certainly there, but as far as any specific details, they haven't confirmed a thing. So while I'm not going to go into much further detail about the Gizzverse, I've left a few videos in the description of other people giving their own subjective take on it. If you want to learn more about it, those videos will give you a good baseline understanding. If you don't worry, you'll still be able to enjoy King Gizzard. It's best to think of the Gizzverse less as a concrete story that is set in stone, and more like a body of themes shared between the albums. 6 months into 2017, and we only had 2 King Gizzard albums. They needed to pick up the pace. But what do you do after making an album like Murder of the Universe? Once you've stared into the abyss and reckoned with the downfall of mankind, where do you go? Jazz! Album number 3 is Sketches of Brunswick East in August 2017. This one is inspired by Miles Davis's Sketches of Spain, and it's a full-length collaboration with Alex Breton from psych pop outfit Mild High Club. You might think that the jazz pivot would be played for goofs, but no, this one is played fairly straight, and I think it benefits from that. It's the most down-to-earth album KG has made since Paper Mache, but it differs in how loose its arrangements are. The whole album is content to just float along and fill your lungs. Countdown is the future elevator music for the King Gizzard Hotel. Don't look at me like that's not gonna happen. A perfect way to introduce this new sound. D-Day throws in a dash of microtonality, Dusk to Dawn on Lygon Street features a great bass line, A Journey to Shell is probably the closest to a usual KG song, but as it goes on, it layers in these synths that sound like sirens. And hey, I should give props to Mild High Club too. If you give this album a listen and enjoy it, I highly recommend checking out them as well. They put out an album late last year. It's a good time. I think this one gets slept on by many just because of how different it is from the rest of their albums, but Sketches of Brunswick East is an underrated piece of King Gizzard's history. Album number 4 is Polygondwanaland, released in November 2017. By this point in my listening, I was saying to myself, oh geez, oh wow, I feel like these guys are due for a prog rock album, and boy did I sure get that. Crumbling Castle opens things up in grand fashion. I don't think a single KG song has been bigger in scope than this one. It does a great job laying out all the various motifs, then blowing them all up and closing with this ominous, lumbering outro. It's like the band is depicting the castle coming down in totality, and then some kind of monster emerging from the wreckage, a stellar track. Just like early KG albums like Mind Fuzz and Float Along, the opener is the main course and everything else is a bonus. Worth singling out though is what fans call the Inner Cell Trilogy, a suite of 3 tracks that reflect the band's skill with multi-layered complex rhythms. Also, is it just me or is this the cleanest sounding King Gizzard album? A lot of the usual distortion from past albums isn't here, or at least it's minimized. I suppose that was necessary to make the intricacies of their playing as clear as possible. With all that said, I should also say, King Gizzard have always done a good job of balancing their technical experimentation with emotionally resonant music. Polygondwanaland, though, is the first time where I'd say they lean more into the technical side. And that's not a bad thing. Polygon comes 5 years after 12 Bar Bruise, and in that time, KG have grown into remarkably proficient musicians. I personally prefer a more even split between the tech and the emotion, but we're all free to have our own opinions. Speaking of free, this album is free. King Gizzard said Polygondwanaland was free to everyone to make CDs and vinyls and any other physical media they wanted. I've also read that the album is in the public domain and thus free to use in media without any copyright repercussion, and if that's true, then their labels didn't get the memo. Mixed messaging aside, Polygondwanaland is another good album. And so, with less than 24 hours on the clock, King Gizzard dropped their 5th album of 2017, Gumboot Soup, on December 31st. We have here a spiritual sequel to Oddments, a collection of songs that wouldn't have fit on the past 4 albums. But just like on Oddments, KG used the more relaxed concept to let loose with a more pop sound. Beginner's Luck, Down the Sink, Superposition, I'm Sleepin' In, all of these showcase the band's often looked over penchant for melodies. But before you go thinking that this is a full-on synth pop album, first off, we're not there yet, and second, there are plenty of typical KG songs like Greenhouse Heat Death and The Great Chain of Being. And shout out to The Closer the Wheel, the most outwardly jazz track KG have put out since The River. Great way to close out an eclectic album. The Madmen actually did it. 5 albums in a year, and what's more, they're all some degree of good. When you also consider that the band were touring regularly in 2017, King Gizzard did something pretty remarkable. Jury's out on if they sleep. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but King Gizzard took a break after Gumboot Soup. Of course, they kept busy. The first half of 2018 was spent recording their next album, and the second half was spent touring the US and Europe. The next year, in April 2019, King Gizzard released Fishing for Fishies. Oh hey, Hantumi, how's it going? This is the most overt musical statement the band has made about our environment so far, dealing with its destruction by man-made forces. Oh, the Hantumi! Anagrams aside though, I gotta say, I love this album. Seriously, I was not expecting to love this album, but it blew me away. The opening title track might be my favorite title track of any KG album. The chorus sonically radiates optimism and joy, contrasted by the more melancholic B section. It reminds me of Fleet Fox's If You Need To, Keep Time on Me, and they even shift between the same two keys. Also that harmonica at the end, pristine work. The Birdsong features a great upright bass part and some lovely piano on the choruses. Boogeyman Sam and Plastic Boogie continue the trend of KG's banger boogies, Plastic Boogie especially, with stellar use of backing vocals. The biggest surprise to me, though, was Acarine. It's a good song for its first 2/3, but then it starts introducing synths until it turns into a dance track. This one totally surprised me. I legit thought that I'd put on like Daft Punk by accident. After my first listen, I was very tempted to say this was my favorite King Gizzard release so far, but I think there's a better way to describe it. I do think that records like Nonagon and Mindfuzz are more representative of the band overall, and they should be the ones any newcomer should check out first. But if you listen to them and they don't click, and you want something that's a bit more accessible and less in your face, give this a listen. I think you'll really like this. Right before Fishing for Fishies dropped, King Gizzard released a solo song, Planet B, which did not make it onto Fishies. I wonder why that was. I no longer wonder why that was. Since Planet B didn't make the tracklist, anticipation for a new album grew steadily through early 2019, and in August 2019, we got Infest the Rat's Nest. This is the second side of KG's environmental coin, where Fishing for Fishies tackled climate change in a lighthearted and upbeat way. Rat's Nest is abrasive and pessimistic, a severe turn into thrash and doom metal inspired by Motorhead and Black Sabbath. Rat's Nest is the hardest and ugliest King Gizzard has sounded yet. It's even uglier than Murder of the Universe. See, Murder of the Universe was ugly, but a lot of that ugliness was kept on a surface level, like in a monster movie where everyone's watching the monster thrash about, but they don't think it's gonna hurt them. Rat's Nest is that monster breaking free and wreaking havoc. An extreme sound warrants an extreme reaction, and my reaction is, Rat's Nest is a good time. It's focused on delivering one kind of sound, and it delivers it. That said, it can feel very single-minded. Mars for the Rich nails the record's overall tone with a chorus that you just can't help but headbang along to. Nobody loves me? That was close. This song and Bohemian Rhapsody both have frequencies. I should also mention, we've got another narrative on this album. A group of people escape Earth because of climate change and try to settle on Venus. And I will say, I am sure this record translates wonderfully in a live setting. It's the kind of record that mosh pits were made for. I can just imagine the closing pair of Self-Immolate and Hell being enough to sear my skin off. In that sense, Rat's Nest is a success. Though personally, if you asked me which environmentally focused KG album to listen to, I'd get my fishing gear ready before you even finished asking. While it wasn't as long as the legendary 2018 hiatus, it would be another year before KG dropped another album. That doesn't mean they disappeared though. The band used this lull to push out several live bootleg recordings starting in early January 2020 with Live in Paris 19. One might call it cruel irony that KG would start releasing live records right before live shows stopped being a thing. What did they know in early 2020? The one live record I want to specifically highlight is Chunky Shrapnel, a double album released in tandem with a concert film of the same name, collecting performances from throughout 2019 with some original music by Stu Mackenzie. The film was originally going to be screened in theaters, but that also stopped being a thing. Whatever your sick plan was, it backfired. Instead, the film screened online for 24 hours. Unfortunately, the film is not currently available in any official capacity, but the album is. From all of the takes I've read, Chunky Shrapnel is considered to be the best King Gizzard live album, but all of the other bootlegs from the band have their standout moments. Anyway, in November of 2020, King Gizzard released the first half of another double album, KG. It took them 16 albums, but they finally did it. They named a record after Karen Gillan. KG is a return to microtonality, the second part of their explorations into microtonal tuning. And it's fine. It's just fine. Who would have thought I'd start to feel fatigued on the 16th album by a band that couldn't even legally drive in Australia? It doesn't help that, in my opinion, KG is the first King Gizzard album to feel formless. Like, it doesn't have much of an identity aside from being another Microtonal King Gizzard album. Now, not every one of their albums needs to have a gimmick or any overarching idea, and it could be said that KG were now able to pack their musical eccentricities into a tight yet fulfilling album, and that's worthy of praise. But combined with that fatigue, by the time I finished listening, my general reaction was, Still, there are highlights on here that stand toe-to-toe with the rest of KG's work. Automation has become one of KG's most well-known tracks as a studio recording, a live track, and a remix project. The band released the stems of the song as well as the music video files and encouraged fans to just go nuts. I also really enjoy Honey. The acoustic guitar motif has this hypnotizing quality to it. Minimum Brain Size earns my second highest compliment ever. It reminds me of that one song Jose Gonzalez did for Red Dead Redemption, which, if that was intentional to harken back to Eyes Like the Sky, is a large and big brain move. And Introsport follows in Acarine's footsteps, as it's the most dance floor ready song KG has put out so far. If you want something more or something new out of your KG albums, this isn't it. But if you've liked the KG albums before KG, you'll like KG. A few months after KG dropped, the band experienced its biggest shakeup yet. Eric Moore left the band to focus his attention on running Flightless. The next 3 records would be released independently by the band. Their first independent release, and the second half of the double album, was LW in February 2021. It's their third exploration into microtonal tuning, but I will say, Luke Wilson is a step up from KG. I love the opener, If Not Now Then When. It's the most compelling argument for a future KG yacht rock album. Can never get enough of those funky funk keys. Static Electricity strikes me as the older, edgier brother of KG's Honey. They both build tension off ominous acoustic guitar lines, a tension that the electric guitars just smash through. I'd also like to highlight Michael Cavanaugh on drums because I think this album has some of his best drumming, especially on Ataraxia and Supreme Ascendancy. And the instrumental closer, KGLW, brings back the doom metal of Rat's Nest. You might ask, hey, wasn't the opener of KG also called KGLW? Yeah, it's very confusing. Between the two, I prefer LW over KG. I always knew the Lizard Wizard was living in the shadow of King Gizzard. Hey, remember Chunky Shrapnel, that live album I mentioned earlier? Especially when I brought up those dreamy instrumental tracks that Stu wrote for the film? Classic Mike the Snare moments. As time passed, the band revisited those tracks and started building out an album centered around MIDI loops and sequencing. The project's scope allowed them to work remotely because it's not like they would have been doing much else in 2020 and 2021. In June 2021, King Gizzard released Butterfly 3000, their full-on dive into synthpop. Now, I was initially worried that by going into a genre that is so omnipresent these days, KG would lose that little extra giz sauce that makes them unique. But it turns out, I'm a bit of dummy. There's a warm and welcoming attitude that just oozes from top to bottom. Some of that can be attributed to Stu having his first child, and it helps make Butterfly 3000 the most optimistic KG album in ages. Well, I should clarify, it's the most optimistic sounding KG album. A track like Dreams, where the chorus is, I only wanna wake up in my dream, I only wanna run and hide, could be read as pessimistic, and other tracks occasionally reveal a darker underbelly, but it gives the album a sense of drama and momentum. I love the pair of Interior People and Catching Smoke. Interior People is about not living in fear of your inner voices, and the way they sing the chorus on Catching Smoke is one of the best moments on any KG song. Just like with their past forays into pop, the melodies on here are some of KG's best, like on Yours, Shanghai, and You Love. And there are still moments where the band leans into their usual sonic bag of tricks, more stereotypical KG fare, like Black Hot Soup and the outro on the closer. Also, as part of the rollout for the album, each song has a music video. Not all of them had Jason Galea involved, but it's nice to see KG bring new artists into the fray and see what they can conjure up. Just like Fishing for Fishies, Butterfly 3000 may not be the archetypical KG album, but I think you're guaranteed to have an enjoyable time with it. The next big item on King Gizzard's docket was the Timeland Festival in December 2021, or rather, it would have been the Timeland Festival if it hadn't been delayed due to COVID. There was also word of a new album to be released in tandem, but that was also delayed and is now due to release when you least expect it. Before riots could start though, we were satiated with Butterfly 3001, a remix album. The most well-known cut off this is DJ Shadow's remix of Black Hot Soup, but also check out Confidence Man's remix of Interior People. Did you ever listen to that Confidence Man album from 2019. That album was great. Anyway, without a doubt, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard will continue to release quality albums at a rapid pace that span various genres while putting on memorable live shows. Who knows, maybe I'll do an updated dive on them down the road, once they've put out another 18 albums within the next 10 minutes. If you want to get into King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Nonagon Infinity, that's the best place to start. After that, my personal favorites were I'm in Your Mind Fuzz, Paper Mache Dream Balloon, Flying Microtonal Banana, Fishing for Fishies, LW, and Butterfly 3000. I will also say, and this is me speaking in my glass house, I would not recommend blowing through their discography in a short time period unless you just absolutely love their sound. Take your time with it, enjoy it at your own pace, and I am sure you'll find something to love. And if you have a favorite King Gizzard song, album, or related thing, I would love to know what it is in the comments. Gotta make sure Henry has his famous pair of scissors. Yeah. Oh, hey,